So one of the first biggest tools I really emphasize with my clients that I want to share with you is sort of like a first key to drawing a man close is to master the cycle of invitation and space. Invitation and space. I hear a lot of people talking about leaning back as like, this holy grail of like relationship advice. And a lot of what I do with my clients is warn them against, just unconditionally being in a leaning back state. Because have you noticed that, Michelle, that like if women are so committed to leaning back all the time, a lot of times it can backfire on them. Have you encountered any of that in your own work?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because you do need to know who you are. You do need to be willing to express your wants, your needs, your preferences. This is not about just being, like a non-entity where you're just there. And I think sometimes that leaning back gives the impression that you like no longer have needs, wants, opinions, desires.
Mm-hmm.
You can't express some of those things, that you just like become passive in a relationship.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what we're talking about.
Not at all. And so what I encourage my clients to do is embrace the cycle of invitation and space, where you as the feminine are constantly inviting and evoking a man to step deeper into his masculine power, right? So you are making an invitation and usually through giving him a feeling statement, right? It would feel so good to go on an adventure date. I would love it if, we did this. Haven't you ever wanted to try that? This feels like it would be really fun to me, right? You make an invitation to him, anchored in a feeling statement or some other sort of incentive. And then you give him space, which is different than leaning back. You want to give him the space and trust that he's going to be able to do it. Because if you say, hey, I would love to take an adventure with him, then you get to honor and respect and give him the space to plan it and to make it happen. And you get to make a decision, right? Because you might see the way he's planning the route and it may not be the fastest route. And so then you get to ask yourself, what's more important, getting there in the fastest time, or giving this man the space to make the decisions for himself? You know what I'm saying? Because that's what I end up doing with a lot of my clients is they'll say, but I know a better way to do the thing. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Right? You may know a better way to do it, but do you really want to emasculate him if it doesn't really matter? Because this is all. So again, in every situation that you're in with this man, master the cycle of invitation and space, and with every success, and then when he does step forward into the space and does the thing that you want him to do, whether it be on a trip or in the bedroom or anywhere, right? Whenever he does the thing, right? Going back to where we started, you want to acknowledge him for it. Oh my gosh, I had so much fun when we went on that trip, or I had so much fun when we tried that position, or like whatever it is, like give the man some, kudos, right? For what he did. And he's going to feel, oh, wow. So she asked me to do this thing. She invited me to do the thing. She trusted me to do the thing. And then it made her happy. Right. And then he's going to, that makes him feel more empowered and more in his masculine. And that's how you can really cultivate polarity in a way that gets you, what you want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to put the exclamation point on a couple of things you said, Matt, because I think they're so important that I just want to reemphasize. The first one is I think having these requests or these invitations from a feeling kind of place, where you are saying, I would so enjoy, or it would make me so happy, or you know what I've been thinking would be so much fun for me. In those invitation kind of ways, coming from a feeling kind of place, a man hears that differently than if you just say, take out the garbage. If I say, yes, oh, it would be so nice if you take out the garbage because that is really stinky and I would feel so much better in our house. I mean, that might seem like an elaborate way to ask someone to take out the garbage, but my husband's going to hear that and respond to it differently than if I just say, take out the garbage.
Yeah. I did a whole video on that called activation versus assertion. Like you always want to be operating as much as you can with a man if you want to keep him empowered and keep polarizing the relationship, to make activating statements, invitations, feeling statements, encouraging requests, right? Rather than commands. Like, because if you're operating from assertion, he may do the thing, but you got to think about when he's doing a thing because you're asserting him to do it, he's doing it so he won't get in trouble. He's doing it so he won't, suffer your wrath, or so he won't annoy you, or because you're telling him to do it. And guess who? Because guess who you're reminding him of when you're telling him to do things and he's doing things to not make you upset? What other woman in his life could you be reminding him of? Mama. Right. And so when you operate from assertion, a lot of times you run the risk of activating his mama trauma, which is something that I talk about a lot, that I came up with, that basically every man has this, almost every man that I've ever known, including myself, we have this sort of like fundamental sort of like mother wound, to where like one of the things that was most traumatic to us growing up was when we were in trouble with our mom. Like nothing was worse than being in trouble with your mom when you were a kid, And so like when we start getting like asserted upon by the woman in our life over and over and over again, we start operating from, oh my gosh, I don't want to make mom angry, and because there's an anxiety, there's like an anxiety at the egoic level that exists around, mom, it's your mama trauma. So like you want to really, as much as possible, avoid just arbitrarily commanding a guy to do things, because you will run the risk of, starting to be seen as his mother, which is, there are a few things more depolarizing to a man than having him look at the woman he shares a bed with in any way, shape, or form like his mother. Okay, so.
Right. Well, and the other thing that I think is important is to not only speak from a feeling place, but also make sure you're making a clear request. Because I've had a lot of men tell me, and you can probably back me up on this, Matt, men don't speak hint. Right? So if we're like hinting around, like coming back to the garbage example, I can say, "Woo, that garbage stinks." My husband will go, "I don't really smell it." And I'm like, the hint was take out the garbage. He's like, "I don't really smell it."
Men aren't mind. That brings up a really good point, right? Men aren't mind readers. We don't know. We do not necessarily understand subtlety. We don't know what you're thinking. We don't know what you're feeling. We need you to be an example of that, right? We truly, truly, truly do. It's super duper important. And another important principle sort of within that, which I also did a video on this, is that men, the thing that most women aren't giving men that they really need to do is they need to give them context to understand why they're asking something. And I don't mean in a defensive way. I don't mean in a oh, I'm trying to like litigate this request with you, but helping a man understand the context of why you're asking for something. Hey, I'd really like it to, go on this, I'd really like to go on an adventure date, because I've always wanted to, be out in the woods with you. And I remember we had a date back when we first started dating where we did that and it was super fun. And I really love to have that again. Okay. Now it's just not an arbitrary request, because remember when we're growing up, our mom is saying, go do that. And then we say, why? And then she says, what?
Because I told you so.
Because I'm your mother and I told you so, right? So again, when you make an arbitrary commanding statement or even an arbitrary request for a man, and you don't give him the context to understand why it's important to you, i.e. how it'll make you feel or what sort of benefit it's going to give you, you run the risk of activating his mama trauma. So these are just all things that when you're making these invitations and when you're encouraging and inviting a man to step up and step into his power, like you want to kind of keep all these things in the back of your mind. And I know it sounds a little complicated, but I promise it isn't. Like once you just get into the habit of doing that. But I honestly find for most women, it's not the invitation piece that's as much of the issue as it is giving a man the space to do it. So that's going to require surrender and trusting. And also trusting that if you continually make invitations and give him space, especially in the early stages of dating somebody, and he just will not do it, then that gives you a very clear indicator of kind of where he's at and maybe whether or not he's able to be the man that you need or that you want in relationship, right? Because what did Maya Angelou say? When people show you who they are, believe them, right? So like, men can talk all day, but if you're they can say all sorts of stuff, right? But if you're making reasonable invitations to him in a warm and loving way, and he's basically like, yeah, I'm all right over here, I ain't going to do that, just by the way he's showing up, then, that's feedback for you. And you get to ask yourself, like, do I want to be in this relationship with this man? It's just
Mhm.
something to think about.
Yeah, and I think your point about the space is really, really key. And that was another thing I was going to put the exclamation point on, because when we make these requests, we make these invitations, we very well may feel that we definitely have a better way to make it happen than they do. Like they may be taking a path in planning something or organizing something, and you're thinking, man, he's really going about this the wrong way or the hard way. But if the end goal is to give him that opportunity and see how he shows up and create this win-win scenario, we have to be able to let go and relinquish the control, even if we're 100% convinced we have a far better way of doing it. And that, you're right, is a challenge for a lot of us. I know myself, because I lived 43 years of my life as a single woman, making it happen and doing everything the way I wanted to, and thinking that I had all the answers. And then I marry this person, and he has some different ideas on how things can and could be done. And I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, my ideas are so much better.
Yeah, well, exactly. And they may be, again, right? But what's
Right,
more important to you? Being in a polarized relationship or being right?
right, exactly.